features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a lovely afternoon here in South Africa. That's at the southern tip of the African continent, and a special warm welcome to Pembroke and Cabran Elementary Schools. It's great to have you with us. This is Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Another special, very warm welcome to Pembroke Elementary and Cabran Elementary Schools. 6 to 8 years old you all are, on safari here with us in Africa. My name is James Henry. David's on camera. That's David's thumb. It's a normal sized thumb. And out on the vehicle, the other vehicle, is Taylor, and she is with Viam. Viam doesn't have a normal sized thumb at all. In fact, it's very large. And then out on foot, I'm talking rubbish to you actually, sorry. Taylor is with Eggsy. Eggsy's a nice cameraman. He's a very friendly fellow, even though he looks like he was in prison once. And then on foot, we've got Tristan, who's a very big fellow, very brave, and he's being filmed by Viam. You must ask Viam to show you his thumb. It's very long. Now, you must ask us as many questions as you like while we're out here. We're going to be looking at as many things as we can. We had reports of lions coming down here during the course of the day. With any luck, we'll find them. But if we don't find any lions, that won't be a sad thing for the things that Taylor is going to show you right now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Of course, we are sitting with an abundance of animals out here today, but my name is Taylor, and on camera with me this afternoon is the rare Eggsy. He doesn't come out much these days, but he is here. His real name is Zander, but nobody calls him by that anymore. Should we have another look at the zebra and the impala? Yes, and I got one fly for me. 0 to the flies. Now, this is really special to see so many different types of animals all together, and especially the impala and the zebra. Now, we're just missing one animal here to make my favorite collection, and that is a wildebeest or a gnu. It sort of looks like a cow, I suppose, if you use your imagination, a little bit, a wild cow, but they look a little bit different. But it's very important that all the different creatures out here live together, and this is particularly important for all the schools that are watching, because safety is the most important thing for the animals out here. If they don't look around them, listen to anything that's trying to creep up to them in the bush, or pick up the smell of a leopard or a lion or a hyena, that means that they could only live a very, very short life, because there are lots of things out here that want to eat zebra and impala, and they are very important for the food chain that happens out here. But look at that, a tender moment between mom and a little impala lamb. Though even though these little impala are so young, they've grown so quickly. But again, you can't stay too small out here for too long. The quicker you grow, the better chance you have of survival. The faster you can run, it means you can keep up with the breeding herds. That's a little boy. But there's so much going on out here. There's lots of birds chirping away. And hopefully we'll be able to show you some of South Africa's birds too. They're really, really pretty. But while we've got some animals, we'll definitely show you some animals. Hello, Sydney. Sydney, you're wondering why the impala's horns are crooked. Well spotted there. Now, it's very important for impala's horns to be shaped in that way, because when they fight, they can lock their horns quite easily. Now I need to try and speak louder than the hornbills, because the hornbills are having an argument by the sounds of it, and we'll show you some hornbills just now. So when they fight, it's important they can hook nicely, but also impala don't just live out in the open areas. They like to go into the thick vegetation too. So almost in these riverine thickets that you see along the drainage lines, they'll go through there, and there's lots and lots of trees and shrubs. So it's easy for them, if they just tilt their heads back towards the sky, they're able, of course, to be able to really easily move underneath the trees Just like that. But we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to hang around here. They've actually heard some elephants breaking branches just behind us. We might go and find them. But I'm going to send you across to James, who's got some warthogs.
This is one of my favorite animals out here because they are so cute. I don't know if any of you have seen The Lion King. Well, this is what Pumbaa was, a warthog. And a warthog, as you can see, is a kind of a pig. And they're not actually like sort of domestic pigs because, well, they don't eat quite as much and they don't really eat the same things. They eat largely just grasses and roots and sometimes some seeds and fruits. But you know, a domestic pig that makes your bacon, well, they eat just about anything at all, including meat sometimes. And why are they called a warthog, you might be thinking to yourself? Or not, even if you aren't, I'm going to tell you. They've got warts on the side of the face. Now, if you look at the one that David is showing you now, you can see just behind the eyes 2 funny little warts. Now, on the males, they've got 4 warts, so that's obviously a female or a sow, and just in front of her, one of her little piglets. Isn't he sweet? He's looking at us and he's eating off the seeds on the tops of the grasses. I don't know if you can see that. And his mum is eating the leaves of the grass there on the ground. Now, why do you think she's so shiny? Why didn't you try and tell me? You haven't asked me a question yet, so I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you think those pigs are so shiny? Jacob, this is a very mature question from you. You say, what is the average weight of an adult warthog? Well, Jacob, the average weight of a male warthog in this area is probably about 75 kilograms or so, up to 80 or 90 and sometimes even 100. So that is roughly 180 to 220 pounds. So they get very big. Although they don't look that big, that's quite a big animal. Now, these are sows, or the biggest one here is a sow. She's a female. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the females weigh about 60 kilograms or so, which is about 140 pounds. So that's pretty big. Amelia, you say, why don't the warthogs eat a lot? Amelia, the warthogs eat a huge amount. They just don't eat anything other than fruits and vegetables. So they're like vegetarians. Sometimes they'll chew on a bone or two or eat a little bit in the way of, say, some rotting meat sometimes if they're really, really hungry. But normally they eat only vegetable matter. So you can see the little ones at the back there are eating seeds. That's what that one's eating there. And then you can see the mum just in front there is on her knees, and she's eating the leaves on the grass there. Jasmine, you say, what are the warthog babies called? I'm going to ask you, Jasmine, to answer that question for your class, and then I'll relay it. What do you call a baby pig? It's the same thing. What do you call a baby pig? Do you know, Jasmine? I bet you do. So why don't you let me know? I'm going to ask you, and you tell me what you call a baby pig, and it's the same thing that you call a baby warthog. Hello, Mrs. Amy. Of course, many people, when they think about Africa, they think danger. And you want to know if warthogs are dangerous. Mrs. Amy, warthogs are not dangerous. Not inherently. Remember, any animal out here, if you threaten it, if you make it upset, if you make it scared, if you make it think that you are going to do it harm, then they can become dangerous. But as they are right now, if I was to get out of the car, or if I was to make any sudden movements whatsoever on this vehicle, those warthogs would run away. They would be afraid, but you can see that there's nothing behind them. There is nothing blocking them from moving away from me, and so they, like most animals, including even lions and elephants, will move away rather than become dangerous and have a go at me. But if I was to attack a warthog and I was to stick it inside, let's pretend I got into an area where these warthogs were stuck in a drainage line, or there was a big bush behind them and they couldn't get away, then they would become dangerous, because then they would try and fight their way out. It's exactly the same as you at school. If you are on the playground and somebody's trying to bully you, you'll normally move away from that bully, won't you? Until you can't move away anymore. And then you will become aggressive as well. And it's exactly the same with the animals out here. Jasmine, well done. You say a baby warthog is a piglet. That is indeed a piglet. Let's head back to Taylor. She is sitting with our most common but probably most beautiful antelope, the impala.
We are indeed still with the impala, and like James just said, they are incredibly beautiful, and they definitely are common. There are many impala. I reckon that there must be at least 150,000 impala in the greater Kruger area, so that's sort of the region that we're in at the moment. And if you look very carefully, you'll notice that most of them don't have their heads up, because they're tucked away in the grass, munching away. And that's one of their favorite things to feed on, is grass, especially because we've had lots of rain at the moment, so there's all this lush vegetation around. However, the impala are very lucky, because they don't just have to eat grass like the zebras do. Once the rain starts to disappear, which it will shortly, the animals will eventually eat all of the grass, and then there will be nothing left. But that's okay for the impala, because they can start eating leaves. They eat so many different things. They can eat fruit, they can eat leaves, they can eat some of the bulbs you'll see them nibbling on every now and then when they get really desperate, which is one of the reasons why they are so successful out here in Africa. But they are important to have around. Remember, I said earlier, the impalas eat the grass and the leaves, and then they turn them into food that the animals like lions and leopards and hyenas and cheetah, they can then eat the impala and get the nutrients that they need, because those animals, they can't eat grasses and leaves. It doesn't work for them very much. Their digestive systems need a different kind of protein. So you see, even though nature can sometimes be a little bit cruel, it is also very, very important. And there's lots of butterflies flying around at the moment. There's an African monarch that was just flying past. There's another one. Now, you may know this butterfly because you get monarchs in the USA as well. They do the massive migrations to Mexico. But we get them down here in South Africa too, which is quite nice. But the impala don't eat those. They just eat the vegetation. But all those flowers need to be pollinated. Marco, now you're wondering what eats an impala. So we were chatting just now about how the impalas have to eat the grass. So things like leopards, lions, hyena, cheetah, jackals, caracals may feed on a young impala lamb. There's many different animals out here. Even some of the eagles will swoop down and pick up a baby impala. So we call baby impalas lambs. So you learned with James that you call baby warthogs, you call them piglets. CJ and Trinity, you were actually wondering exactly that, what impalas or baby impalas are called. Well, there you go. We call them lambs, but they don't make the same noise as a sheep. They don't go bah. If you listen very carefully, the impala are actually talking to each other. Let's see if we can hear them make their funny noises. Now, I think they're too far away for you to hear. It's very quiet, but they make sort of strange noises like a bah, bah. Bop, 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 yeah, bop. Those are the sort of noises that the impalas make as they talk to each other. And then if they get scared or frightened, though they're not scared or frightened now, so say if they see a lion or a leopard or anything like that, they do the snorting noise. It almost sounds like popcorn popping. You know how the little kernels, they don't all pop at the same time? It's different. You sort of hear pop, 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 pop. But they make the snorting noise when they get a fright. Now, Jasmine, you were wondering when do impala get their horns? Eggsy, can we find a little boy? I think there's a young male impala somewhere. So, Jasmine, it's normally after about 3 or 4 months or so you start to see the little horns popping out. Now, of course, we can't see one just yet, but I think most of the herd is hiding behind the bushes, so hopefully we'll get a better view. But it's relatively soon, like I said, after a couple of months, 3 or 4 months before you see those tiny little horns coming through. And then what happens is that after a year, can we find one that's about a year old? There we go. You see the one that's got its back towards us with the, go to the left a little bit? There we go. He's just put his head down. He's right at the back. Not the big one, to the right. There we go. He's in the top right-hand corner. You see that Impala over there? He's about a year old, just over a year old now. So soon, he's going to be kicked out of this herd. Mom's going to say, I've got a new baby now. You are big enough. You can go and live with the boys. And then they form a bachelor herd. So a bachelor herd is what we call a group of boys that are living together. And then once they become big and strong enough, like there's a big male there with very, very long horns, he'll eventually be the one that looks after all of the ladies and all of the babies. But for now, those other ones are still a bit too young. Now, Amelia, you're wondering how to tell the difference between the boy and the girl Impala. It's actually very easy with the Impala because only the boys have horns. The girls don't have any horns at all. Though, sometimes you get, oh, look at these two boys chasing each other. This is quite exciting. So these are two dominant males. So they're big, strong males that are going to be competing to look after all the ladies and their babies. And we're coming to a season called the rutting season, which means that the boys are going to fight for the best herds of ladies. So we call a group of Impala a herd. And when they chase each other, they make that snorting noise, and sometimes you get a fright and you think, oh my goodness, maybe there's a leopard or a lion or a cheetah chasing an Impala. And then it's not. It's just the boys chasing each other around, but they get quite excited. Aren't they beautiful though? Now, I think the one on the right is quite young. He's got a bit of muscle to still put on compared to the other male, so I think he'll have a tough time. But it's not just James and I out here today. Tristan is doing a bush walk, and you must tell him when we go and say hello to him that he has to go and find you the McCurdy Hurdy.
Taylor, it's a new hunch, so we've already found sitting around right here, doing all the camera work, looking after us so nicely. So we have Herbie, our security. Just you may notice that I have a frog on my head because it is International Frog Day. So we are going to try and see if we can find some frogs. I'm going to go to lots of pans, go looking around for frogs. Fine. Try and position ourselves so we can get a bit zip them. That back. See, she's up.
It is indeed World Frog Day, everybody, and we're hoping to find some frogs a little bit later. Now, where you're at home, the best way to find a frog is to wait till summertime. I know that it's nearly springtime where you are now, and I'm sure you're very sick and tired of winter. I know I get very sick and tired of winter by the end of winter. But the best thing to do is to go and find a puddle in a nice countrified area. So you get out of the city and go and find a puddle, but at night normally. And then you listen and you'll hear them calling. And then you take a torch or a headlamp and you can go and hopefully find them. Now, when you find a frog, just remember, they're normally totally harmless to touch for us, but for them, it's not so harmless. So if you pick a frog up, you need to have latex gloves on so that the oils on your skin don't go onto the frog. Normally the frog is completely harmless to human beings. Now we're coming down here because there seems, I've had reports on the radio that there's an elephant around here. So with any luck we're going to find the elephant. He should be just up here, but I'm not sure. We're going to head towards a waterhole where elephants often like to drink at this time of the day. So we'll keep looking. Well, Amelia, you ask a very good question. You say, how can you tell the difference between a boy frog and a girl frog? Well, Amelia, in some species of frogs, for example, something called the bushveld rain frog, I wonder if I can find you a picture. I'll see if I can find you a picture just now. The male is tiny. He's only about that big. That's about the same size as my thumbnail. That's how big a bushveld rain frog male is. The female's about 3 or 4 times that size. She's about that size. which is about, well, I don't know, about the length of my finger, let's say. So that's the easy way to tell. One male and one female. And then some frogs, that's not the case though. Some frogs, they look exactly the same. So you'd have to wait until they were laying eggs to know if one was a female or not. Because of course we know the males cannot lay eggs. They just help with fertilization. And the females are the ones that lay the eggs. And they will lay eggs in puddles, and hopefully the frogs will grow from there. Now I believe there was an elephant somewhere around here. So we might be lucky. I'm going to drive a little bit faster. Adrian, you're wondering if any animals will eat onions. Adrian, I don't know. I've never tried to give an onion to an animal. I guarantee you, I'll tell you one animal that'll eat an onion. I bet that a warthog would eat an onion. And I'll also tell you that, you know, many animals eat what we call wild tubers. And a tuber is a fruit that, or something, or not a fruit, like a modified root that lives under the ground. That's exactly what an onion is. So there are lots of wild onions around here. I don't think many of them taste as strong as the onions you might want to eat or might not like eating. I suspect that's why you're asking. But there are many animals that do eat those onions. So yes, I would say many of the warthogs would eat onions. Elephants like to eat lots of different things, especially things that they dig out of the ground. So maybe elephants might eat an onion. Do you not like onions? I quite like onions. Do you like onions, David? David loves onions. But we're a bit older than you are now. We didn't probably... Did you always like onions, David? No. I didn't like onions when I was a small boy, as opposed to a small man. Right, we're just heading towards a little waterhole now, and hopefully there'll be some birds, and with any luck, this elephant. I might just have to get onto the radio and ask where the elephant was last seen, because although an elephant is so very enormous, they're quite difficult to see out here, especially when the bush is this thick. And I wonder if there isn't an elephant here. I'm going to ask Rebecca if she doesn't know where there's some elephants are, and if she's found some, we'll go and have a look at them quickly. This is amazing technology that we have out here, that we're able to show you lots of different things. Right, we're just going to... Here's the waterhole. Is there an elephant here? Will we be lucky? Will we not be lucky? Oh, it doesn't look like we're going to be very lucky. That's a bit sad. I wonder, Rebecca, do you want to show the children the elephants at the dam camp? We're quite a long way from there. Have a look at this, everybody. There we've got some elephants. You see that? They're all having a bit of a drink. It's one elephant. And it's only got one tusk. Can you believe it? Now, elephants sometimes lose their tusks in the same way that people sometimes lose their teeth. Now, people often lose their teeth because maybe they eat too many toffees or sweets, or maybe they've had an accident and they bashed them. And normally what happens is that with an elephant, I'll show you right now what happens with an elephant. Often elephants eat the bark of trees. And if we look here at the bark of this tree, just down a bit, Dave, there you can see an elephant's tusk mark in the side of the tree. And what they sometimes do is dig their tusks into the bark to try and break it off, because for an elephant it tastes very delicious indeed. I don't know why. It doesn't taste very delicious to me at all. So if I break off a piece of bark, you can see, if you were to do this with your teeth, you'd definitely hurt your teeth. And then they eat this stuff. It's not very nice at all. Elephants like it though. You can see maybe that elephant came across here and pushed too hard on this tree and managed to snap off his tooth. Can you imagine how sore that would be? I don't know if you have ever broken a tooth or chipped a tooth. It's very, very sore indeed. I'm going to try one more road, see if I can't find an elephant. Oh, Amelia, this is a very difficult thing to talk about because it's very sad, but it's a good question. You say, why are elephants becoming extinct? Amelia, elephants are becoming extinct because of people. And people are, well, we're just not so nice to the earth, you know, we're not so nice to nature. Elephants need space, they need to be protected in areas, and we as people are not very good at giving them their space. We're much too concerned about taking from nature than we are about giving back to nature. So, for example, sometimes in places where elephants live naturally, people will build villages and build homes and build cities, and then the elephants don't have anywhere to live. And then sometimes they will cut down forests because they want to make furniture out of the trees, or maybe they'll cut all the plants out of an area because they want to make homes, and that makes it very difficult for the elephants to live. Or they want to clear the land to make a farm so that they can grow corn or wheat or something like that. And that's why elephants are going extinct. And also people shoot them to take those tusks, to take the teeth, because they use them to make decorations. Now, can you imagine how stupid we have to be as human beings to use teeth for decorations? Don't you think that's very sad that we do that sort of thing? There's no need for it. There are lots of other things that you could use instead of that. Now, Jasmine, you're wondering how elephants lay their eggs. Well, Jasmine, elephants don't lay eggs at all. Elephants are mammals. And mammals, which are what we are, and monkeys and impalas and warthogs and bison that you get in the United States, and bears and lions, we all give birth to what we call live young. That means that we don't lay eggs at all. We give birth to live young, live babies. Oh, there's a bird. Shh, everybody. I'll keep talking very quietly. Can you see it, David? Look at this beautiful bird. That's called a woodland kingfisher. Jasmine, I'll answer your question now. Now, a bird, of course, does lay eggs. All birds lay eggs. Chickens are birds. Chickens lay eggs. And woodland kingfishers are birds, and they lay eggs. And this particular woodland kingfisher lays its eggs in the hollow of a tree. In other words, a hole where you might find a squirrel as well. And although it's called a kingfisher, because some of kingfishers catch fish, this woodland kingfisher is not a fish eater, it's an insect eater. Isn't he gorgeous? Now, he's a young one, and I know that because the bottom of his beak is only a little bit black, and on the adults, the whole beak is black on the bottom and that lovely rich orangey red colour on the top. So although he's young, he's the same size as an adult. He's just got a slightly smaller beak, and his colouring is just very slightly different. So he's looking with very, very sharp eyes for something delicious to eat. And that would normally be an insect or a centipede or a beetle or something like that, and sometimes even a little lizard. Now, he's about the size of my hand. So you've got small hands, all of you, of course, because you're small people. So if you put two of your hands together, that's roughly how big that woodland kingfisher is. And I'm talking quietly because he's very close to us. And if we make a big noise, he'll probably fly away. Look at him, and if you watch carefully, he's blinking. Can you see that? There, you see he's blinking? Mrs. Amy, you want to know if I know any good safari jokes. Mrs. Amy, I do know a number of good safari jokes. Unfortunately, not many of them are appropriate for children. So I'm not going to tell any safari jokes today, I'm afraid. I will try and come up with some for the next time you see us. Let's continue with Jasmine's question. We'll leave that wooden kingfish and see if we can't catch up with this elephant. Jasmine, so I was talking about the fact that mammals give birth to live young, which is what they do. That means that they don't lay eggs. Elephants are mammals just like us. And the other thing, there are other two things that mammals have got. All mammals have got hair, like us. You know, we've got hair. I don't have so much on my head anymore, which is a bit sad, but I've got it all over my body. And we also suckle or nurse our young. So you know that you and your mothers nursed you when you were very little, and all of those impala that you saw and the elephant that you saw, when they were very little, they were nursed by their mothers. Their mothers gave them milk. Only mammals do that. Birds don't do that. Reptiles like crocodiles and lizards don't do that. Fish don't do that. And nor do frogs, which hopefully we will find sometime today. We want to see some frogs because it is World Frog Day. And Adrian, you want to know what elephants like to do. Well, elephants like to play basketball. They like to go skating in the winter time. And when it's Christmas time, well, they like to drink eggnog. I'm obviously talking rubbish. I'm just joking. That's a small safari joke for you there. A relatively clean one. And what elephants like to do is eat. They have to eat all the time. Because they're so very big, they've got to eat probably for about 75% of the time. That 75% is going to mean nothing to you. So about 3/4 of the time that they're around. So you get up, for example, in the morning, and then you're very tired and you go through to the breakfast room and or the kitchen, and you have cereal, or you have, if you have very progressive parents, you probably have some bacon and eggs, something like that. And then you don't eat anymore until lunchtime. Or you might have a small snack in the middle of the morning, then you'll have your lunch, and then you might have tea later on, and then you'll have a big dinner at the end of the day. Something like that. An elephant doesn't do that. An elephant's got to keep eating from the time it wakes up in the morning. They wake up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they eat. And they eat 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 and they eat. And sometimes they stop for a little bit and they have a little bit of a sleep, and then they eat and they eat and they eat and they eat and they eat. And they keep doing that the whole day until nighttime, through the nighttime, and they only sleep for 2 hours. So they will go to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they will get up again at 5 o'clock in the morning and start eating again. So there's no time for them to do anything really other than eat. When they're little and they're still nursing like we do, then they like to behave like children and they like to play. So it's just like us. You know how when your dad and your mum are tired, well, they don't really feel like playing all the time, do they? Because they're adults, and adults don't feel like playing too much anymore. But you know that you as kids love to play. You love to find a game to play. You love to run around and do that sort of thing. Well, young mammals and sometimes even young birds like to do exactly that. Now, what we're going to do quickly in here is see if we can't find a hyena. Now, this hyena, I want you to all be very quiet as we drive in here. This hyena has got little cubs, and they get very scared if we make a big noise. So I'm going to drive very carefully and slowly in here, and we're not going to make a noise, and David's not going to move around too fast on the back of the car. And with any luck, we'll see the hyena mum and her 2 babies. Now, they live in what we call a termite mound. You always know what termites are. They eat wood. They are related to cockroaches, which I'm sure many of you go, ugh, when you think about a cockroach. But termites are very beautiful, and they're very important. Now, let's just look through here. I'm hoping that there's going to be a hyena here. There might not be. You see, on safari, you just never know. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. They don't have a schedule like us. You know that when you are at school, well, at 8 o'clock you've got to do this and that. At 9 o'clock you've got to do this and that. At 10 o'clock you've got to recess. Ooh, look, there's no hyena, but there's a kudu. And unfortunately, the kudu is not very brave. In fact, it might be described as a bit of a chicken. It's run away. It's very sad. It's a beautiful animal. There's a kudu. and he was just watching us driving up here, and then as soon as we looked at him, he thought, oh, I don't want to be seen by them. Now, I'll show you where the hyenas live, but I don't think they're here right now, unfortunately. No, I don't see them. But if we look through there, you might just, can we see it? Sort of. Can you see the hole there, everybody? That's where the little cubs are. They're inside there. And they're waiting for their mum to come back. Because they don't eat meat yet. They only drink mum's milk at the moment because they're very little. They're only about 10 weeks old. So that's not very old at all. They were born probably somewhere towards the end of January. Alright, let's carry on. Chloe, you have asked a very, very good question, and for some birds it's easy to answer, and for other birds it's really not. Nobody really knows. You want to know why some birds have got colour on their feathers. Well, in birds like hummingbirds, which I'm sure all of you have seen, the male bird is very colourful and the female bird is not colourful. And so the colours on the bird are to help the male to find a wife. That's often why male birds have got long tails or coloured markings on their shoulders or beautiful colours like hummingbirds have got. And that's to attract females. But that woodland kingfisher, for example, the woodland kingfisher is the female's also that colour, and no one really knows why. Righty, Taylor has found something else nice for you to look at, so let's go and find out what that is.
We've decided to have a look at some birds. Remember I said I was going to try and find you some of South Africa's coolest birds. Now this is one of my favorites, and hopefully it doesn't move away too far. Excuse me. It is a crested. Take a deep breath.
Sorry about that, everybody. Taylor's having a little bit of trouble with her car there. Not sure what the trouble is. Anyway, we're going to keep looking around and see what else we can find. I'm hopefully going to find the kudu just over here. Let's have a look round the corner. Now the kudu ran down here, so we're going to drive slowly. Ooh. Do you see it, Dave? It's a bird. But I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. It flew into these bushes here. There it is. It's a cuckoo. Can you see it, David? It's an African cuckoo. And now it's flown away because it's not very brave either. Do you know what a cuckoo does? A cuckoo doesn't build its own nest. A cuckoo lays its eggs in the nest that somebody else has made, and they don't ever look after their kids. So it's a little bit like, imagine your parents were at home one day, then they went off to work, and then when they woke up in the morning there was another person's child just in the house, and then they had to raise that child. That's what a cuckoo does, which isn't very nice of the parents, but that's just what they do. Now, the kudu came down here. Let's see if we can't find it. Amelia, that is a good question, but no, they don't. You say, do any of the birds not lay eggs? Do they sometimes give birth to live young? No, they don't. But I'll tell you one group of animals that does. Sometimes lay eggs and sometimes give birth to live young. Some snakes do that. Some snakes they carry the eggs inside, so it's not like with mammals, but they carry the eggs inside the body and the eggs hatch inside, and then they give birth to what looks like live young. Now, I'm going to teach you a very fancy word, Amelia, and I hope that you're going to be able to say it. The word is ovoviviparous. Can you all say that, everybody? Are you ready? Ovoviviparous. Right, we're all going to do it together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ovoviviparous. An ovoviviparous animal is an animal that gives birth to live young but carries the eggs inside. That's like some of the snakes that we get out here. Now, Honesty, you've asked a question, and if I heard it correctly, it was, do birds laugh? Was that correct? No. Oh, are birds loud when they see humans coming? Sometimes they can be very loud, Honesty, and sometimes they do what we call alarm calling. And when a bird alarm calls, what it's saying to its friends is, get out of the way, get out of the way, there's something coming. And often they think it's us that are coming to get them, and so they tend to be a little bit nervous and they will make that loud sound. I thought I saw something, I did, but it's a log. It's nothing interesting. Let's keep going down the road here. We might be lucky with something else. Maybe a big bird, maybe a buffalo, maybe that elephant that I'm so excited to try and find you. But nothing so far. I will, however, show you what an elephant makes a lot of in a day. There on the ground you can see elephant dung. Now, dung, I think, is a much nicer word than poop, so we're going to call it dung. Elephant dung. And I don't know if I've showed you this before. Now, you may be wondering why I'm looking around. Well, you just never know what's out here, of course, so you must look around. But elephant dung, I don't know if any of your parents drink wine, and sometimes they smell it and they go, that smells nice, and then they take a sip and they say, well, wine gets better with age. A bit like human beings, really, I find. This elephant dung, when it comes out of the elephant, smells disgusting. But now, after it's been sitting in the sun for about a week, it smells delicious. It smells like sweet earth. And if you're having a tough time with mosquitoes or something like that, or flies, sometimes we get biting flies out here, or sweat bees, we can burn this and we can put it on the side of the car like that, and the flies won't come near us. So I don't know, why don't we just see if we can try and do that? Shall we do that? David is very clever because he doesn't like flies. He often carries fire with him. Not so, David. Let's see if I can light it. I'm not very good at lighting things. We just need to get out of the wind. There we go. And yeah, I don't want you to worry that we're going to burn anything down. David, this thing doesn't work very well. It's a dud. You know, my friend Steph can do this without even having a lighter. Oh, what a disaster. No, it won't light. Anyway, you can see a little bit of smoke coming off there. Yep. And that's actually probably enough. If we were to put that there on the dashboard like that, then although we wouldn't be able to breathe, we wouldn't be bitten by flies. So it's a choice, whether you want to breathe or whether you're prepared to be eaten by flies or not. I tell you what, being bitten by the flies is very unpleasant. So sometimes we just have to hold our breaths. Righty. Let's see what we can find down the road here. While we let our elephant burn. It's a delicious smell. Alright, everybody, we're going to say goodbye to you from the schools. I hope you have a lovely day. I'm sorry we were late today. I know how your teachers get very cross with you if you're late for your lessons. So I hope you're not too cross with us for being late for your lesson. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And now to the adults, hello. I'm going to talk in a slightly more dull fashion. until my heart has just calmed down slightly. My name is James Hendry. On camera today we have David. Very nice, David. You can see the thumb was more adultly put in front of the lens. Very nice. We are, in fact, inhaling the smell of this rather delightful elephant dung. And I wasn't really joking when I said that you have the choice between being bitten by the flies or inhaling the smoke. This will, even that small amount, will eventually asphyxiate you. And it's a toss-up, like I say. Good. Okay. We'll put that down there. And I suppose many of you would be thinking to yourself, good grief, the man must be out of his skull. How can he be putting a smouldering coal in the bush? In the winter I wouldn't do this, but you can see nothing is going to burn around here, so it doesn't worry me at all. But if there is a bushfire, and in fact when you set fires on purpose in areas like this, or you burn fire breaks, you've really got to watch out for elephant dung, because it holds a coal for a long time and it'll start a fire again in seconds. And in fact I had that experience once. I was in charge of a team of chaps burning a fire, and we were burning a fire break, hoping that nothing would sort of catch, and we supposedly put the fire out. And so we went home for lunch, and the game drives went out, and a guy got hold of me on the radio, and he said, are you guys still burning? So I said, no, we finished 2 hours ago. He said, well, there's a very big plume of smoke coming from the south of the reserve. And I looked to the south, and my heart went into my big toe on my right foot. It was the most dreadful feeling. Anyway, we managed to get it out. It wasn't a major problem, but that was from a piece of smouldering elephant dung that the fire got away. Alrighty, Tristan apparently has now got some signal and something to make him sound decent. Let's go across to him and say hello again.
Indeed. Well, hopefully we have, James. It's been an afternoon of trying to work out exactly what's going on. So I can at least now say hello to everybody. My name is Tristan, as James mentioned, and on camera today I have VM. And like I say, we are on our bushwalk, so we are out and looking for things small that we can show you. Now, it is World Frog Day, and unfortunately I had a frog on my cap, but with all the sound issues I went back to camp and I left my frog behind, which is not ideal. I shall get it later. Now, we were walking along and we found something quite incredible, which I have now lost sight of. VM, do you know where it went? It was here somewhere, and it is incredibly well camouflaged, so that is why I'm having to look very, very carefully as to where it has gone. It was somewhere here. I can't remember now where I had it, Vim, but it was here. It was an incredible insect that looks like a blade of grass. Now, with all this grass that we have here, that's why it is quite difficult to actually see it. But I'm trying to see. Herbie, who's our security detail, he was the one who managed to spot it first. And I actually don't know how he first saw it. It was quite an incredible spot from him. But I have lost it for some reason. I don't know where it has gone. It was somewhere in this general area. I know that. No, I'm trying to see it, but it looks exactly like one of these pieces of grass that we have here. So I'm trying to see. Alright, well, I'm going to try to see if I can find the stick insect, because it seems to have given me the slip, even though they're not the fastest creatures. And while we're talking about giving the slip, I know Taylor's had a few little technical issues today, so let's go catch up with her so she can say hello to all of you before she loses signal too.
I'm still here, and I promise we haven't decided to drive to Mozambique or go on holiday anyway. We've just arrived. We're going to have a look at the hyena den to see if it's active, and I really hope that it is, because we haven't seen the little cubs for quite some time now. But with this cold, miserable weather, I'm also not surprised that it hasn't been too active. Nope. And sadly, you can see that there is nobody home. I'm sure the little cubs are tucked away in their burrow, but it doesn't look like Ribbon is here, sadly. And hopefully the weather will start to improve over the next couple of days, and then we'll get them regularly in the morning and then in the afternoon again. We'll have to keep trying though. That's alright. Now, I had some elephants earlier at Terrapin and then they disappeared between the Mulwati and vulture's nest. And it looked like quite a few of them, so I wouldn't mind trying to find them again, if they're going to cooperate with us, of course. So we'll have to try. But just in case you have just joined us, happy World Frog Day to all of you. And also, if you have any questions, or should we do a little challenge? Let's see. Now, obviously, we're always showing you South African frogs, South African birds, or African animals. I would like to see a couple of different types of frogs that you get all over the world. So I know that most of you that are watching are living in America or from Australia, from everywhere really, Europe, you name it. So why don't you see if you can find a picture of your favorite frog species or the most common frog species that occurs around in the area where you live. And you can add that picture to Twitter and then add the hashtag Safari Live to it so that of course we get it and we can have a look. And then that way we're able to learn a little bit more about the different species of frogs that you get all over the world. I think that would be quite a nice idea. Now, seeing as though I've got my frog book here. Yes. And we're going to hopefully find some frogs a little bit later tonight. Hopefully it doesn't get too cold, otherwise they're not going to be too happy about that. And now, James, you're wondering if there are any frogs in this area that are endangered. Well, that I can think of. One frog that comes to mind that is endangered, but we don't particularly see it here because we got the eastern olive toad, but the western olive toad in the Western Cape of South Africa, so all along the west coast, Cape Town, George, all the way down Plettenberg Bay, all the little places around there. The western olive toad is actually endangered, and one of the number one reasons as to why it's endangered is actually because of roadkill, which is quite sad. Obviously, we as humans we've built these massive highways encroaching into wilderness areas. What it's like when we get a bouts of rain, how the frog population just absolutely booms and they come out of nowhere. And similar things happen, and lots of water is on the road, also frogs. You see all the different animals crossing the roads that we've created, so they'll do the same thing, and they often get squashed by cars. Actually, I don't think the banded rubber frog is in danger. I'm just trying to think off of the top of my head now. It's not very well, you don't see very often, but you hear it all the time. Eggsy, how's your frog knowledge? Huh? Right, so I'm not actually sure if we get any in this particular area that we've got that are in danger, but we'll have a quick little look. But we're going to keep going. You're not far from Chele Pan now. We'll have a little look in between all the thickets to see if those elephants have perhaps popped out. But let's go back across to Tristan, who's looking for one of the most camouflaged things you can find in the bush.
So unfortunately I couldn't find the beautiful insect I was looking for, but what it was a predatory katydid. Now a predatory katydid is a type of insect that is very big, that was probably about that large, and it is perfectly coloured for the grass, and even looks like the shape and blade of some of the grasses we have out here. So unfortunately for me, I don't have the eyes that Herbie does, and I wasn't able to spot it. The other problem with them is that they are winged and they can fly, so maybe in the time that I was not focusing and watching, it flew off, and that's why we lost sight of it. But this afternoon, I suppose all things frogs is what we should be concentrating on. So I'm going to go try to see if I can find some pans, see if there's any sign of any frogs out and about. We will be looking a little bit later when it gets dark, because that's the best time for frogs. But for now, I think what we'll try and do is see if we can find some nests or any sort of sign of frogs in any of the mud wallows that we have around here. Also, we're going to try to see if we can find any tracks for the royal family too. Now, we are going to carry on walking and, like I say, head towards a pan system. And while we do that, let's go across to James, who's got a very large animal that also likes the pans to wallow in.
And there we have an elephant. It is a young bull elephant. He's coming to say hello to us. Don't leave, please don't leave. You're all we have, and we like you. Isn't he cool? Oh, but what a vicious boy.
And you know, he diverted specifically to come past us. It's so interesting. Let me just move around the side of him, because we're quite close to the southern boundary, and I think he's going to go over the edge. Over the edge. I think he's going to cross the border. I don't know that he's going to go over the edge. Clearly I went over the edge some time back. And they do like pans, obviously. They like to drink water, they like to put mud on their bodies. We'll just gently get around the side of him. We don't want to startle him, but we do like it when they come and have a little bit of an interaction with us. And just remember, you can talk to us, #Safari Live, of course, because the school drive is over. And so now it's just all about you. Let's go down here. Oh, watch out, David. We've been spotted. See that? Pigs. I don't know why, but most animals are normally more nervous on windy days like today. Well, these piggies, well, they're a little bit nervous, but they're not nearly as nervous as they have been. We've had 2 lovely warthog sightings now. Well, that warthog sow has got a bit of a limp, and I suspect, therefore, that she's not long for this world. She's looking at the elephant, which is now off to the left. Now, I'm just going to warn you that what you're about to see is the tale most tragic. Not this elephant's tail.
Indeed it is, James. So for those of you that are a little bit sensitive, it's probably time to look away. But you can see there is a millipede here that is in half and is still moving. So whatever has happened to this millipede, it has somehow managed to get away and is still alive, even though half of its body has been crushed completely. Now, it could be from a tortoise. We do know that the Spix hingeback tortoises, which we get in this area, they actually do eat these guys from time to time. And just judging by the way it's been crunched at the back here, I would imagine that maybe it's from a tortoise. But it's definitely not any other thing like a bird or something like that. You would have found that they would have not even tried to break through that. I have seen wild dogs crunch them like this as well, but generally then they would roll in them, and also we know there's no wild dogs in this area as there's no tracks of them. So pretty crazy thing to see, and not something that you would want to see every day, but it just shows you how strong some of these wild animals are, that they're able to still move around like that. And if we were people and we were cut in half, there's no ways that we would be able to do what we're doing. And I think, unfortunately, that's going to be the end of that little millipede, which is really quite sad, and it's something that does happen, unfortunately, out here. Everything has to eat, and unfortunately animals do pass away from time to time, and that's just a very horrible way to go. It's always nice if they just get a clean, easy death, but that's not so pleasant. But like I say, incredible amount of strength and amount of power to be able to work through that. You can imagine how difficult it must be with half a body to be able to still move around. Is incredible. So poor little millipede. I'm sure Taylor will be very upset because one of Mildred's family is unfortunately no longer. Now, we're going to just carry on and see what else we can find. We do have some impalas out here in front of us. They're watching us ever so closely, as impalas do. Now, today is particularly windy and the conditions are not great for animals, and you'll find that a lot of the prey animals like impalas and zebras, they're going to be trying to find somewhere to get to safety already. Even though it's not dark yet, this wind will be playing havoc with their ability to hear and their ability to smell what's going on. And so for them, they're going to try and get into an open space like we're in now to be able to try and avoid predation, because the predators this evening are going to be a lot more active because of the wind and the dark, gloomy conditions that we will experience this evening. So you'll find that a lot of them will be very, very alert. Interesting question, Winter Prism. You're asking me if the animals that eat millipedes will be able to sequester the toxins from them and be able to carry it with them and then use it for their own defenses? Well, not as far as I know. So if you look at Millipede assassins, you look at the wild dogs, definitely don't get it, and the Spix hingeback tortoise, none of them actually get that trait. I've seen that the Spix hingeback has been consumed on multiple occasions by multiple different species. So I've seen hyenas eat them, ground hornbills eat them. So it tends to suggest that even though they're feeding on this animal, they basically are able to break down that toxin inside their stomach acids, and that's how they're able to survive off it. So it's probably not like the moths or caterpillars that are able to sequester the toxins from a plant. It's a little bit different. They're able to then just digest it in their stomachs, which is quite a crazy thing to do. The other big hunters of millipedes are scorpions, and we know that scorpions are eaten a lot out here, particularly by the birds. So definitely they do not sequester the toxins from those millipedes. Now, it seems like the conditions today are quite strange. There's a very, very thick crowd of bank, and it's really not very, very pleasant. Gremlins General, you're wondering if that millipede will be able to survive and regenerate the other half of its body. Unfortunately not. It doesn't have that capability. It's not like a gecko or some of the lizard species that are able to drop their tails off basically in a way of confusing a predator and then getting out of there and then being able to regrow it. They unfortunately don't have that capability. So that millipede unfortunately will die. That exoskeleton has now been broken and crushed, and there will be no way that the exoskeleton can then be replaced again. Now I can hear some birds chirping behind me. Vim, can you see them? Ah, there it is, yes. It is a redback shrike indeed, Vim. Very good spot. Now, interestingly enough, I was actually looking today, I saw some photos of a leucistic shrike. So a leucistic shrike is a shrike that lacks color pigments, and the bird was completely white, and there was a lot of debate around it as to whether it was one of these redback shrikes or if it was a lesser grey shrike or a bush shrike, and it is probably impossible to tell because it had no pigment whatsoever. It was just white, so you would need to use the size, the general shape of the beak to be able to try and give you a rough idea of what it was. But it was seen in the Kruger National Park, so it's possible that we would be able to see it here, and that would be quite amazing. Imagine seeing a bright white shrike flying through this bush. It would immediately stand out, should I say, which would be quite incredible. Now, Rebecca, I'm sorry, I was busy talking and I didn't hear you. The redback shrike is also making quite a racket behind me, so if you can repeat that question for me. Interesting, Carrie. You're wondering what bird has the most types of calls out here. Well, I would imagine that, for me, I would say that probably the drongo. The drongo tends to mimic a lot of different birds. They don't do it very well, but they do mimic a lot of different species. I've heard them mimic even some of the mammals, so they'll use the sounds of a dwarf mongoose or a meerkat to be able to subsidize their food by making an alarm call and causing those mammals to try and flee for safety and be able to then drop the food, and they then fly down and take the food that mammal was feeding off. They also imitate some of the owl species, and then I've heard them imitate some of the robins as well. So they're probably the best at it as far as I know. There might be some other birds that have a wider vocal array, but as far as I know, and particularly in the area that we're in and the birds that we see, that's probably the best of the mimics out here and the most widest variety of calls from one bird. Now, those redback shrikes that we just saw now, I suppose we better start appreciating them, because this little cold turn that we've had is going to be probably the last of a lot of the migratory birds. This little change in weather that we're experiencing, you can feel that the autumn is on the way for us now. So summer seems to be going away a little bit. The temperature has changed. There's a colder wind. The days are getting shorter. Insect production is less, and so a lot of the migratory birds unfortunately are going to start leaving us. So I suppose we better appreciate them while they are here. They always add so much of a new dimension and lots of color and vibrancy to our days that it's actually quite sad when they leave. We miss most of them and can't wait for their return next summer, so better appreciate them. And talking about appreciating things, I think let's go across to James Hendry, who's always a mine of information that we can harvest and see what he's up to.
There's a kudu. They were out. There's a kudu there. Rebecca's explanation of Tristan's link was quite spectacular. Very amusing. There's the kudu, which is now leaving in disgust because it stood there in its most regal fashion, and all I did was giggle at it as soon as we went live, and so it's thought, well, to hell with you, and it's leaving now. I wish we'd got a proper look at the one that was at the hyena den there. It was a magnificent chap. It was much greyer than that one. In fact, it was almost sort of elephant grey, of huge horns. He was fantastic. Unfortunately, that guy is now headed into Litligari. We're going to go down to Chitwa Dam once we've looked at this elephant that's up ahead, and apparently there are more elephants at Chitwa Dam. I'm forgetting what cats and predators look like out here, but at least we have elephant in abundance. We'll just have a look at him here. The wind oh, hello. We could just wait here while you guys go across. You want to go across? We'll just back up a little bit. There we are. There are quite a number of elephants here. This is wonderful. Beautiful stuff. Now, there's quite an interesting situation here. That chap that you just walked past, I think, unless I'm very much mistaken, is it? It looks like a bull. And I think when we first saw him, he seemed to be in the process of testing a female. But he doesn't look like he's in must to me. So he's probably just quite young. Oh, there's a bit of a fight going on, David. That's very cool. I think we'll spend as long as we can with these chaps. I think they were at Chitwa Dam. They've now come out onto the clearings. They're going to be eating some grass and leaves and whatever else they feel like. And this is what they will do for most of the night. Except the little ones who, as I was saying to the kids earlier, like to horse around. Can you say an elephant horses around, David? I think you can. Let me just move very slightly forward so that we can see the extent of the herd, because there's a very little one with its head almost buried in the ground. You see it there? Yeah. I don't want to drive down there towards it because we'll cut half the herd off from the rest of it. So we'll just wait here. That's a very little fellow. Here we are. He was trying to dig himself out a little root, but his trunk doesn't work quite properly yet, so he had to put his mouth right onto the ground. This is wonderful stuff. He didn't really want to eat it either because he's a milk drinker. Now he, like so many of their ilk, is coming to say hello to us. This is so wonderful. It's almost impossible when you see things like this to conceive of the fact that for, extended periods we didn't have elephants at all. They just disappeared. Here he comes, you see, he's coming to show us how big and strong he is. Now, Aussie Mum, as we are, well, I'd say, insulted by this young elephant bull, you say, isn't it so nice to see their skins glossy and healthy? It is nice. I must confess to you that I am not sure that I've noticed any difference in the shade of their skin. But yes, they look healthy and fat, which I think is fantastic. And there are a whole lot now. Well, let's just wait for this guy, but the rest of them are now crossing the road in front of us. Two younger bulls, or older bulls, sorry, are having a bit of a boxing match. And this guy just won't let it go. Now, of course, it's very cute when a little elephant does that. Were one of the ones in front of him to do the same thing, it would be quite substantially more terrifying than that was. Just trying to see here. Yeah, there are quite a few young bulls here, you know, who are older than I would have expected them to be. You know, those two chaps look to be about 20, and I think that's a bit old for them to be in the herd. Maybe they're just struggling to leave home. Who can blame them? And they've definitely been playing in the mud for quite some time. Probably in Chitwa Dam, and now they're just bored. That was a bit of a spike in the bum there, wasn't it, David? Very nasty to spike your friend in the bum. And he's now sort of leaning against a tree, seeking comfort. You're coughing there, David?
Excuse me.
Are you alright?
I'm fine.
You don't need to be hospitalised. Thank goodness. Oh, don't push the tree over. That's very nasty of you. And they do that, of course, for the same reason that they fight with each other. They just feel like it. They show that, or they try and show a bit of dominance, just sort of show the tree who's boss. Let's see if he does it again. See if he takes the poor old silver cluster leaf tree with him. This is a big herd of elephants. Now, as we sort of try and understand the extent of it, what's interesting is that the normal sort of size herd in this area is probably about 8 to 15 individuals. I'd say they're probably about 25 here. But often, herds will join up with each other. And I wonder if these two bulls don't actually belong to different herds. And they've just met up, and that's a greeting there, the trunk inside the mouth there. And there are quite a few all the way down the back of the road, which we won't show you now. You don't have to, well, if you want to, David, you can. And I think they're probably from two different herds. We can't get a slightly better view of these guys. Mary, you're wondering about when elephants die, where do they go? Is it, as the Lion King suggested, towards an elephant graveyard, a place to die in private? Mary, they don't. They do, well, they don't go to a graveyard. You didn't actually ask about a graveyard. You asked about where they go, or if they go away. They tend to move away from the herds, yes. There's a cow, beautiful cow here. They tend to move away from the herds, Mary, because they can't keep up, A, and B, they want the softer food that is near the rivers. And so they go down towards rivers, and eventually, often, they do die alone. So do they make a conscious choice to go off and die on their own? I think that many of us who've owned pets, not elephants, obviously, dogs and cats, have noticed that they do kind of extract when the time comes to pass on. And who's to say that elephants don't do the same thing? The scientists will tell you it's because, well, they need to go down to the water to eat softer food. But I think there could well be an element of them wanting to extract, wanting to die quietly and privately. But very seldom will they die actually in the herd. Alfred, you want to know how strong an elephant's trunk is compared with the human arm. Well, I suppose it depends on the human, really. About the same strength as my arm. I'm not sure about yours. I'm obviously talking utter nonsense. Alfred, there is not a human arm in the world that would come close to possibly 5% the strength of an elephant's trunk. An elephant's trunk is monumentally powerful. I'm trying to think of an example. They will pull over a tree with that trunk using the same. Or how thick would a tree be? Well, look at the tree behind her. Look at the tree behind her here. Now, using their trunks, they would be able to pull over a tree probably just slightly thinner than that. Certainly a big bull elephant would be able to. You cannot compare the strength of an elephant with a human being. It's almost incomparable, because they are so very powerful. For their mass, they're probably not. I mean, their power to mass ratio is not fantastic in the same way that an ant's is, for example. An ant will sometimes lift 50 times its body weight. An elephant is unable to do that. But simply in terms of pure brute strength, an elephant is far, far stronger than any human being could ever hope to be. I mean, I wouldn't be rushing to try and tangle in an arm wrestle with one of these chaps. Oh, she's eating a greatly varied amount of food, this cow. She's eating creepers, she's eating grass, she's now eating a bit of grass, at least a bit of sort of bark. And James, we've been looking at those bulls who've now sort of moved off, and you say, does it depend on their behavior as to when they get kicked out? Yes, absolutely it does. If they are more rambunctious than the others, then it is very likely that they'll be kicked out slightly earlier. Or if they're not kicked out or excluded totally, it will mean that they have to spend greater periods alone, away from the herd. So yes, that can happen. Oof, there are even more of them coming from the back there, Dave. You see that? Vast swathes of elephant. Why don't we go forward and just see if we can't see them all in the clearing here? Reese, we really have absolutely no idea about the answer to your question here. You say, how many elephants do I think pass through this area? I couldn't begin to tell you. Because we don't keep tabs on all of them, we don't know all of them, we don't know all of the dynamics in the herds. I just want to move so that we can get a whole picture without the beastly rain roof pole in the way. How's that, Dave?
Yep.
Alright. And you can just see them sitting here in the clearings, some of them playing, some of them having a good time. Ooh, there's a bit of bullying going on here. Look out here. There's a cow there giving discipline to all these three youngsters, or four of them. Shouted at them, she made them a big low rumble and pushed them out of that thicket, and now she's moving them off. Very disciplined society are the elephants. Right, Tristan has got, well, he has put his head into the dragon's lair, as it were.
Well, I don't know if it's the dragon's lair. I hope not. It would be quite unfortunate if a dragon had to pop out. Wouldn't you say, Vim? I reckon it would be quite something. But what we have found is a termite mound that is quite active. But the amazing thing is the amount of heat and moisture that is coming out of this mound. You can see that the lens will start to steam up as VM puts it inside there. There is all this moisture and, like I say, hot air that's rising. And the poor camera lens doesn't do very well. It starts to get very steamed up and it becomes quite difficult to see, which is quite amazing. But it seems to be that they're all shutting down for the afternoon. They're very, very lazy. There's none that are really right up at the surface. They all seem to be just on the inside here. And I wonder if maybe they're not prepping for rain and they're looking for a way to maybe start closing up this area so that they do not get flooded. You can see all of them at the bottom there. They're right down at the bottom, and you can see the different termites that we have. You've got the small little workers, which are those creamy colored ones, and then there's the soldiers with those very red heads that you see also walking around as well. So these guys are fairly chilled this afternoon, and it's quite amazing because I've been standing here and we're on the edge of the termite mound, and they've been around but they haven't shown any sort of sign of aggression. I wonder if maybe with the cold weather they are a little bit more lethargic than normal. Just don't drop your torch down there, Vim. It'll be a painful retrieval, I would imagine. But isn't that incredible? It's not often you get to see down a termite mound. So this particular one that we're at has got this beautiful chimney that we're able to see down. So it is really quite something to watch actually what goes on inside one of these mounds. That's the one good thing also about the weather that we're having. This rainy weather means that they are starting to build. So if when we come out, you see here on the edge of the mound, there is actually a place where you can see that it's been built on. So they've taken particles of soil when the soil was wet, and this is what they've mixed with their saliva and their feces to build the structure. And at the moment, it's still quite brittle. It hasn't quite hardened yet, and that's why you can see there's a color difference between the harder stuff at the bottom and the new stuff that's just been built recently. And so I think what's happened is that today it's a little bit too cold, and that's why everybody is being a little bit on the sedate side. And maybe when it cools down a little, well, when it starts to become nighttime and the wind drops, it will actually probably warm up a little bit, and then it will be perfect conditions to build with. Also, you'll find that termites are often very active at night, so a lot of the building that takes place is at night because there's less predators around. So you'll find during the day lots of bird activity, so things like hornbills, starlings, they'll all land and try and feed off this. Whereas with the night time, there's only really the land-based nocturnal predators that they have to worry about. So it's much easier to build at night than it is during the day. Now, Carl, you're wondering if the structure is the same as that of an ant's nest. Well, theoretically, if you think about tunnels and chambers, yes, termites and ants both have tunnels and chambers, but ants do not build a structure like this. As you can see, I'm standing on top of the termite mound, and on this particular termite mound, I've actually seen elephants on top of it feeding, so it is incredibly strong, whereas an ant's nest tends to be a lot more brittle. If I had to stand on an ant's nest, it will just break down completely, so a little bit different in that regard, but both of them do build tunnels and chambers and utilize them underground to be able to move around and store eggs. The other difference is that in some termites, they're actually using this as a growing area. So some of them are fungus feeders, and so when they start the mound, they'll actually have fungal spores on them that they plant inside the mound, and they control the temperature to be able to grow this fungus effectively that they can then feed off it. So it's a little bit different, whereas ants will actually go and collect food and bring it to the mound itself. Reese, this is a very in-depth question, and I'm actually not 100% sure, but you're wanting to know how much influence termites have on the climate in this area. Now, I actually, like I say, have no idea. They have a huge effect on the vegetation, which I suppose indirectly will lead to a different type of climate. We're going to get into a situation where as vegetation is eaten, so there's going to be a lot more evaporation going on. There's also going to be a lot more erosion and a lot more runoff of water, so there's going to be less water that stays in a certain area. So it would be quite interesting to actually know how they affect climate in this area. I'm not 100% sure, but it is a very interesting subject, and I'll try to see if I can do some research and try and find out a little bit more about it. But I haven't read anything anywhere of them affecting the climate in this particular biome. I know that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of termites. In fact, more termites in weight than there are elephants in the Kruger National Park, and there's about 18,000 elephants, so there is a lot of termites out here, and they eat more per day than everybody else, all the other mammals and grazing animals that we have out here, which is pretty insane. So in terms of climate, I would imagine that they probably can have an effect because of the way that they affect the vegetation, but I don't think anyone's actually done a proper study and has any concrete proof of that. Like I say, I'll have to go and try and see what I can find out. Now, we haven't had much time with the Taylor McCurdy, so I think let's cross over to JB, and she can explain why she's called JB, and we'll see you a bit later.
Oh, Tristan, treading on thin ice, my friend. Yes, we won't discuss that, but we'll talk about this beautiful terrapin that is at the moment trying to sunbathe on a very cloudy and overcast day. But of course, it's not really getting any warmth from the sun, but I suspect that nice sandy bank, which retains quite a bit of heat, will be warming up the underside of that terrapin's shell. But it's not just the terrapins that are living here at Buffelshoek Dam. There is a pair of hippopotamus that are here too, but at the moment, one is only brave enough to poke its head above the water, and they are playing a game of Bop the Weasel, but Bop the Hippo. Up and down they go. Now, I've been sitting here trying to work out who we have, if it's a male and a female, or if it's possibly mom and an offspring, because they're not particularly big hippos, and hopefully the other one will pop its head up. And it's almost impossible to tell when they're in the water like this, whether they're male or female, unless you do have a big male, a dominant bull in the area, because they're normally enormous. And especially to hold a big territory like this in Buffelshoek Dam, this is actually prime property over here. So I can't imagine that a young bull, unless he's of course very lucky, has managed to scoop up a piece of real estate like this. So we were just going to have to, well, sort of guess. And they haven't opened up their mouths, so I can't see if they've got particularly big tusks or big teeth coming out of their mouths. So, and that normally is another way that you can tell whether it's a male. But yes, like I said, unless they're out on land, it's almost impossible. But they're a bit nervous. They're bobbing up and down. So I don't know why they're so unhappy. We've seen these hippos before, and they seem to be a little bit nervous of the cars. You can hear every time they pop up, they almost do an angry snort towards us. You know, they come up and they snort, or they breathe quite deeply, and the water sort of sprays out of their nostrils. But you can see they do that evil eye towards us. I don't know, they don't like the cars very well. But what I did want to tell you is I've been looking at a couple of frogs, and I must, a correction, for some bizarre reason I was telling you about a western olive toad. I meant to say a western leopard toad. Now we get eastern leopard toad here, eastern olive toad here, western leopard toads and western olive toads on the west coast of South Africa. And seeing as though it's World Frog Day, I suppose we should spend a bit of time chatting about these beautiful creatures while our friends the hippos are not being so great. So I do apologize. I did mean to say the western leopard toad. Eastern leopard toad's not quite as endangered, but another toad that is really quite beautiful and that I haven't seen in a very long time, and I'm lucky to have actually seen this one, is the Amatola toad, and that lives in a very specific area, and I actually have a picture of it for you. Okay, there we go, this one here where my thumb is. There we go. It's quite beautiful, don't you think? It's almost got a lovely bronzish gold sheen to its skin. And you specifically find these in the Eastern Cape, on the Amatola mountain range, and in Hogsback. Now, Hogsback is a very, very small area where they occur. Now, again, like the western leopard toads, a massive problem with roadkill. And another thing, of course, which is, and you'll get it all over the world, is agriculture. So massive tree plantations for paper or growing fruits and vegetables and things like that. All those fertilizers are getting into the water, and it is toxic for the frogs. And that's one of the biggest problems. We always tell you shouldn't pick up any frogs with your bare hands because of all the lotions and all the things that we have on our hands that are not good for the frogs, because one of the ways that they are able to breathe is actually by absorbing air through their skin. And of course, by doing that, they're absorbing all of those toxins too. So there are a number of different things, but getting rid of the rainforest for urban settlements and things like that is not great either. That's also lowering the population. But there aren't too many frogs in South Africa that are specifically endangered. There are some that are location specific, like the micro frogs and ghost frogs in Table Mountains, things like that, of course. I'm just getting a question. Let's have another look at that terrapin. And Alani, you were wondering if a terrapin shell is softer than a tortoise shell. And I've actually handled both. I would say yes, that the texture of a terrapin shell is a lot smoother though. So it almost feels a little bit more rubbery, if that makes sense, but also then no at the same time. You don't quite have those rough scoots that a tortoise has on its shell. It feels a little bit different. Underneath, though, they're both relatively hard. But I would say that I think when you're living in the water all the time, like anything, it does become slightly softer. But not too bad. I'm going to sneeze now. I do apologize. Excuse me. My goodness, now I'm getting death stares from the hippopotamus now. Luckily, the terrapin didn't mind so much. My goodness, and I do have terrible allergies. Exie, can you... Now, I would love to reposition this car. Rebecca, do you think I can go back a little bit and change the angle so we can get a bit better view of these hippopotamus? Let's try. There's lots of gremlins around here. They're hiding in this long grass. Let me do the... How's that, Eggsy? That's a bit better, hey? And then I will jump out of the way here. There we go. Come on, open your mouth. Look at this hippo is celebrating because we've managed to get a view. And body slam down. Now, of course, this is a threat display that it's doing. Lauren, you're wondering if the females stay with their pod the whole lives. Typically they do. So this is one of the other reasons why I'm uncertain as to who we have here in the waters, because normally when you see a pod of hippos, you might only have a couple of adult females, and the offspring will often stay with their mothers if they are girls. The bulls move off and they go off eventually and find a home of their own. But while they're females, so sometimes you can see one adult cow, and maybe 2 or 3 of her offspring, almost like what you see with an elephant of various sizes. So that's what happens. So they do, but there's exceptions to every rule. There's definitely a chance that maybe there's a dispute amongst the hippos. Perhaps she just would prefer to be on her own, and they can leave too. There's no sort of set in stone rule, but typically the girls will stay with their mothers or live in that same family group in the same dam for most of their life. Unless it dries up and then they have to go and relocate, they will do that too.